Hey, what's up guys? So in November, I like to try to cram out a lot of slasher films I like to watch before December actually hits, and that's where I try to get deep into it. But if you follow me on Instagram, you already saw that I watched Krampus this year, but I'll watch it again. I gotta watch Krampus more than once. It's my favorite film from that guy. So what I wanted to do today was show off, or talk about rather, my top 10 favorite non-franchise slasher films. So these are not films that have multiple sequels, or any sequels at all. These are one-offs. Some films that have stood the test of time, obviously, but they never made more sequels. They were just movie, boom. And that's something that I kind of like nowadays looking back, because to me that kind of makes some of those movies special. So why don't we just jump right into it? And I want to give one honorable mention from the start. That's going to be Rosemary's Killer, aka The Prowler. Joe Zito film. Really dig that one. My only complaint with The Prowler is it's a little slowish at some times, but when it ramps up, boy, I mean, The Prowler ramps up. Tom Savini effects and Joe Zito directing is always a home run. He's done some amazing films, and I'm not just talking Friday 4. Like, look up Joe Zito and see some of the great stuff he's done. He's awesome. But here we go, guys. My number 10 in my non-franchise slasher films is the amazing, must-see Madman. Oh yeah, Madman Mars. Now, I first came across this movie through Pizzow and some other guys that reviewed it when Vinegar Syndrome put out this Blu-ray for it, and it was something else. Madman is a really charming, fun slasher film. It's made by people with a dream and a camera, a good camera. But the killer of Madman Mars is actually a pretty threatening, big, monstrous dude, and I'm actually a really big fan of Madman. I'd definitely say check it out. There's actually a 4K Vinegar Syndrome put out, so great slasher villain, the Madman. I was always a fan of the big, monstrous slashers, and Madman Mars fits that criteria, so check that movie out. It's something. All right, number 9, guys, is a movie called Curtains. Now, this came out, I believe, from Synapse Films. Curtains had a very interesting looking cover, and I didn't really know what to expect. Curtains has some really stark visuals in it, and it's got a really good story. Kind of gave me some Italian horror kind of vibes in the beginning of the film, but it ramps up really good too, and there's some really great visuals with the killer out in the snow, and there's a bathroom scene that I won't spoil too much, but you'll never open a toilet seat the same way again and not think of this. So Curtains is a movie I certainly don't want to spoil, but it's got to make the list. It's actually a damn good slasher film. Coming up next is from the early 90s of all times. How about a movie called Popcorn? Yeah, I'm a really big fan of Popcorn. A really charming little slasher film that I believe was filmed in Jamaica or the Bahamas, one or the two. But Popcorn has a really good cast. I believe Dee Wallace is in the film. It's kind of like a pre-Screamish type film where it's kind of like a mystery killer, and everything takes place in this movie theater, which is really cool, but really cool reveal. Love the character designs. Again, I believe Synapse was the company that put out Popcorn. Definitely give that a watch. I'm a really big fan of that film, and it's really fun. So 91's Popcorn, 2 thumbs up. All right, guys, number 7 comes from, I believe this is Canon Films. Charlie Bronson. I had to put this on here. This is a movie called 10 to Midnight, and it's a really bizarre, scary film. It's about this killer that put a lot of this crazy sexualization in the film, where the killer likes to just be bare naked when he's stalking his victims, and it's a really tense thriller slasher film starring Charlie Bronson as a cop that's trying to track this guy down. And when Scream Factory put this out, I was just like, oh wow, what is this? And again, I watched this film 10 to Midnight, and it just rocked my socks, and I guarantee you it'll rock your socks. So definitely get your hands on 10 to Midnight. It is all that and a bag of chips. Coming in at number 6 is an interesting film. I believe this might have been the second or third Scream Factory movie I ever bought. That is The Burning. Yeah, Cropsey the killer is great, and what's interesting about this movie is the cast. I really want to go into the spoiler-free because I do have younger viewers that are getting into these kinds of films, so definitely check that out and see if you recognize some people. But the interesting thing about this, and if you're a veteran of the slasher game, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but Tom Savini passed up doing Friday the 13th Part 2 and did The Burning instead because he didn't like the idea of where Friday 2 was going. But The Burning, man, is a great prototype slasher film of what the genre really became. You know, because Halloween is certainly like the front-facing movie that kicked off this genre, but when Friday the 13th came out, that was the legitimate blueprint for what we were going to get. And this is right in that vein, dialed up to 11. So The Burning is a great, great movie, and it's really Friday the 13th-esque in almost every way. So it's interesting that Tom passed up 2 to do a Friday the 13th ripoff, but he did, and the effects are amazing. Very, very brutal stuff. The Burning is awesome. Scream Factory still has the license to that. If you don't own that, pick up that Blu-ray for sure. All right, number 5, guys, comes from the early 80s as well. This also comes from Paramount. This is My Bloody Valentine. And one of my favorite things about this movie is the fact that it doesn't have a sequel. It's got a remake. To me, that makes this movie special, and because they really get it all out in My Bloody Valentine. You could certainly have gone into sequels, but because Paramount put this out, I think they were already starting to feel a little bit of the backlash from the news outlets and variety reviews or whatever at the time in the newspapers, so they probably were like, we probably need to take a break on this stuff, because they hadn't gone too far with Friday the 13th yet, and that money was pouring in. But yeah, My Bloody Valentine is just such a damn good movie. What I liked about My Bloody Valentine is the group of characters, there's somebody you can identify with, and I think that's really cool. So I certainly have my character that I'd identify with in My Bloody Valentine, and it just goes to show that, you know, slasher films, you know, they have more than just the kills. There's a lot of memorable stuff you can get from them, and My Bloody Valentine is certainly an example of that kind of movie. So yeah, that's got to be in the list. Number 4, the one Christmas movie that's in here, it's got to be Black Christmas, man. Wow, so excited for the 4K coming out from Scream Factory. Hopefully they do a good job on that. Massive fan of that movie, and yeah, this is going to be awesome. Black Christmas is a masterpiece. In some ways, I think it's probably one of the greatest slasher films ever made, much less just the top 10 of this list. So intense, so scary, still scary, damn good. There's nothing else for me to say. Let's just move on. Yeah, Black Christmas, masterpiece. All right, my top 3. Now, these are hard-line top 3s. These are some of my favorite movies of all time. Number 3 comes from Charlie Mann with a film called Tourist Trap. This is a scary, creepy-ass movie. I first saw Tourist Trap when I got the Laserdisc for it, and it was under a weird label that Charlie had at the time. This was pre-Empire, much less Full Moon, but yeah, when I got this, I was like, holy crap. You know, Tourist Trap is damn good, and it was actually came out in the late 70s, 78, 79. One of the greatest directors that does not get his due till this very day. The term underrated is thrown around a lot, but David Schmaler, without question, is one of the most underrated directors, and I wish more people would put him in the pantheon of great horror directors. David would go on to work with Charlie for a number of films, and his library of cinema is just to be embraced by all accounts. But Tourist Trap stands the test of time without question. It's one of the best, in my opinion, that the genre has to offer. And you'll never look at Mannequins the same again. Tourist Trap is an A+ film. Coming up next, these next 2 films are intense, and I damn well want everybody to see these films. Number 2 for me is Lucio Fulci's The New York Ripper. Now, the thing I gotta say about The New York Ripper is, without question, this is one of the most brutal, uncomfortable, dirty, gross slasher films you'll ever see. And that's what makes it so great to me is, you know, Lucio was not pressured, but people were wanting him to get into that kind of genre because of the popularity of it. And Lucio was basically saying, you want me to get into the slasher genre, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you a film, but you better be ready for it because this is going to be intense. And The New York Ripper has one of the greatest opening scenes I've ever seen, just to set this up for you. We're in New York, obviously, and there's this dog, I believe it's a golden retriever, and he's out in the marsh outside, and comes up to the owner, and the dog has a human hand in its mouth, and woo, that just set the tone for The New York Ripper. Truly an intense film, not for the weak of heart, but this is the slasher genre. My favorite kind of slasher films are the ones that aren't friendly, the ones that aren't nice, because I like to feel something. So The New York Ripper is a film that must be seen to be believed. The killer is very different. The elements of this film with the killer are very unique and different and bizarro, but the intensity of this film is truly something to be, I think, admired. Lucio basically took the slasher genre and turned it on its head in a way that I don't think had ever really been done in that capacity, except for my number 1, which we're going to get to right now. But yeah, The New York Ripper is my second favorite non-franchise slasher film of all time. So my number 1, non-franchise slasher film. Almost had a sequel, but we're not going to count it. It never got finished or anything officially. The number one non-franchise slasher sequel for me is William Lustig's Maniac. Yeah, Maniac to me is about as good as the slasher genre can absolutely get. I think that Maniac is a remarkable film that does a number of different things. It's extremely suspenseful. It's extremely gory. It's really character driven, and it gives you the movie from the opposite lens, where you're behind the eyes of the killer, and the weird psychosis that's going on with Joe Zito, who does an amazing job in this film, and William Lustig's directing. The whole thing is just money. This movie will make you feel like you need to take a intense shower afterwards. The same goes for New York Ripper. And part of me went back and forth on whether New York Ripper should be number one or Maniac should be number one, but I think Maniac edges it out just a little bit because of how good Joe Zito is at being this menacing character. The subway scene is so intensely suspenseful that, wow, it's something else. And the scene where Tom Savini gets his head blown off by a shotgun made me take a big gasp, because the first time watching it, when you watch Maniac after you've seen a number of slasher films, like especially a number of the slasher films that are a little bit more mainstream, Maniac will surprise you as a seasoned slasher fan, and it's a masterpiece, truly a masterpiece. I think Maniac is about as good as that genre could possibly offer. So if you've seen a lot of these films, that's awesome, but if you haven't seen some of these, or let's say you haven't seen any of these, I definitely think going straight to the top and just getting your feet wet in what the genre can truly be, an uncomfortable, intense, moving type of cinema, go for the New York Ripper and Maniac. Those are some of my all-time favorites, and I like the intensity. That may not be for everybody, but I ask you, if you're a seasoned fan as well, let's crank out some lists out in the comment section and let the people know what are some of your favorite all-time non-franchise slasher films. There's a lot of these movies that were on the list that got taken off and got put back on, but certainly my top three are my favorites. Maniac, New York Ripper, and Tourist Trap are some of my all-time favorites. I encourage you, the viewer, to drop some down below, and maybe you could drop something that I haven't seen, which would be great. But thank you guys for watching this video. Take care. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. To get behind-the-scenes photos, videos, and music, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month.